Yep.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We were in closed session, so we're a couple of minutes late. Sorry about that. I'd like to call to order the City Council / successor agency to the Redevelopment Agency meeting of City of San Carlos, September 9th, 2013. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Changes to the order of agenda. Mr. Maltby, I was thinking that we would change, if it's possible, swap 5A and 5B. In other words, 5B would come first and then 5A. Is that all right?
Yes, sir.
Any problem with that, Council? Okay, thank you. Any other changes? All right, report from closed session, Mr. Rubens.
There are no reportable items, but we did not complete the agenda, so we'll be reconvening at the conclusion of this meeting.
All right, thank you. Council communications and announcements. Council communications and announcements are brief items from members of the City Council regarding upcoming events in the community and correspondence that they have received. They are informational in nature, and no action will be taken on these items at this meeting. Mr. Grocott, anything?
Just one item. I had gotten an email from one of the residents who thought it might be nice to recognize any of our firefighters that went up and helped fight the rim fire, and so I thought I'd mention that to you. It's something we might want to do.
Maybe we can get city staff to look in to see how many. I think there's at least half a dozen, I think, that went up there. So maybe we can have some sort of a, maybe those individuals could come to City Council or something, and we could, if possible, although those schedules might be hard to put together, but at least get their names and have some sort of an honor for them. Okay? I'll leave that to staff. Anything else? Ms. Clapper?
This morning I attended the JPA board meeting for the San Mateo County Library and did the final approval of the budget for fiscal year 13-14. And we will be getting a report from the library manager in an upcoming meeting with the annual report that is currently in draft form that they're producing with some really great statistics about the what our libraries do in the county. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Collins?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple things. I attended the HIA lunch last week. We had a very interesting presentation on what the process that Belmont is going through to revamp or remodel Ralston Avenue, which is it's been a very public process, and that was quite interesting. And then the other thing, I attended our government affairs along with, I believe, 3 other council members last Friday. We had a great presentation by our own Christine Boland on our Parks and Rec Commission.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Olbert?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had one item, which is after our discussion last time at the last meeting of the below market rate housing waiver request, it occurred to me, I think there's an avenue of trying to resolve some of the log jams with the transit village that we haven't taken advantage of yet, which would be to have the council send a letter to the oversight boards of Samtrans and Caltrain and basically ask for their assistance in trying to resolve some of the quandaries that we're operating under. And so I don't know if anybody else is interested in that, but I'd be interested in having us discuss the possibility of doing something like that in short order, see if we can make something happen.
Okay. I think that might be a good idea. Maybe we can schedule that, agendize that, and have a discussion about that at the next meeting.
If that's the desire of the council, that's what we'll do.
All right with that? Okay.
Good.
All right. And I had, yesterday I attended the San Mateo County, it was the 12th annual Interfaith Public Safety Memorial Service. And it's quite a moving service. It was held up at Notre Dame Dean Amir University, and it honors all the fallen firefighters and police officers, all the public safety folks that we've lost in the past year. And the good news was that during the year we didn't lose anyone who was on duty. There were some people who had been retired who we did lose, and they were honored. But this year we did not lose any folks. But every year they honor all the people that have been lost over the years, and all the agencies in San Mateo County. And it's quite a moving service with bagpipes and music and readings, and every name is mentioned, and with a bell rung after it. So that's all I have. Okay, moving on. 5, and let's go to 5B, which is present the proclamation of the Friends of the Library for their donation to the library remodel project of $275,000, which is amazing to me. Go ahead. If you have something to say before, go ahead.
I'm Jan Smith, president of Friends of the Library, and representing the Friends of the Library with me is Nancy Laxon Heighton, secretary, and also Karen Clapper, who was our renovation coordinator. 3 weeks ago, the Friends of the Library board was very fortunate, and we got to tour the library renovation, and we were extremely, extremely pleased. On behalf of the Friends of the Library, officers, board, our wonderful volunteers and members, it is our privilege to present to the City of San Carlos our total donation of $275,000 for this excellent renovation.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I'm stunned. I mean, it's amazing the amount of money. Now, this is over, what, an 8-year period you raised this money, or 10-year period? Yes. Right, and that's amazing. Just selling basically books, is it once a month?
Donations and memberships.
Donations, memberships, and selling books. Let me just read a couple of comments here, recognizing and commending the Friends of the San Carlos Library for their contribution to the community. Whereas the Friends of the Library was established in 1999 after the opening of the new library, and they've worked tirelessly to organize and stock the bookshop, coordinate selling of rare autographed books through the internet, and staff the monthly Friend Shop to sell other used books and souvenirs. And the proceeds raised by the Friends of the Library have always been donated to worthy library causes such as Healthy Cities tutoring, author talks, children's programming, and other library programs. Whereas the Friends of the San Carlos Library have been involved in the planning of the library remodel from the beginning, and have generously pledged $275,000 to the remodel efforts. Therefore, I proclaim that I, Bob Grisilli, Mayor of the City of San Carlos, on behalf of the entire City Council and San Carlos community, hereby commend and thank the Friends of the San Carlos Library for its generosity and contribution to the San Carlos Library interior renovation project dated this 9th day of September 2013. Thank you so much, ladies, and everybody. So, want to get some more pictures here? Cool. Great. Again, thank you. Yeah. Sorry? Oh, sure, absolutely. Go ahead. Maybe we'll step over this way a little bit. Thanks. Thanks for holding it, by the way. Anyway, all sides, both sides, all sides. Hello. Can you get everybody in here? Stand between us? We're good? Great. Got it. Thank you again, ladies, so much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So now we'll jump back to 5A, which is a mosquito abatement district update and a verbal report by Robert Gay and Betsy Snyder. Mr. Gay here? Betsy, do you want to say something first?
Good evening. I don't have a presentation plan, but Manager Gay does. Just say that the district has an excellent financial administrator in place, and it seems to me that the internal controls are being abided by the district. But Manager Gay has a report.
Thank you, Betsy. Mr. Gay, welcome.
Thank you very much. Mayor Grisilli, Vice Mayor Olbert, City Council, city staff, and residents of San Carlos. Your Mosquito and Vector Control District wants to thank you for this opportunity to address your city and provide an update on our services and programs. West Nile virus is alive and well, in the state of California and the Bay Area also. As of September 3rd, a total of 101 human cases of West Nile virus have been reported from 23 counties with 6 fatalities. In the Bay Area, Santa Clara County and Contra Costa County have recorded the highest West Nile virus activity in humans with 3 cases. They've had over 100 positive dead birds, 36 positive mosquito pools, and 4 to 6 sentinel chickens have turned positive. In San Mateo County, we have recorded a number of chronic West Nile virus positive birds and squirrels, most recently a squirrel in Burlingame and a house finch in El Granada. But chronic West Nile virus infections have a very low level of virus and have an unknown infection date. Otherwise, we have no human cases in San Mateo, no positive dead birds, no positive mosquitoes, and no positive sentinel chickens. So we are very proud of our program so far this West Nile virus season. Our staff continues to provide your residents of San Carlos mosquito control throughout their communities. They can call the district, and within 24 hours, a staff member will be at their residence controlling and looking at what their problem is from mosquitoes. We do surveillance for all of the vector-borne diseases in this county. That includes West Nile virus, two forms of Lyme disease now, hantavirus and plague, and a new tick-borne disease we uncovered, tularemia and anaplasmosis. We do door-to-door inspections for mosquito problems. That's especially going on right now down in Menlo Park with the new Aedes aegypti I'll cover in a minute. Again, as stated, we do our service requests within 24 hours. We do control of ground nesting yellow jackets within your community. A great many people will call the district for yellow jacket problems, and we will go out and control the ones that are ground nesting. We provide mosquito fish to all of your backyard ponds that people have. We do presentations to school and civic groups, and we, of course, do any kind of identification for ticks and insects. Many people will bring us their doors off their kitchen cabinets wanting to know what insect is burrowing into it. We do public outreach, and we now do all of the rodent surveillance program. Our staffing has significantly changed over the last 2 years. We hired a new finance director and accountant after a national search. We received them from the corporate world. We hired a new assistant manager and laboratory director with a national search. We also hired 2 new vector control technicians with a statewide search. These new staff members have allowed the district to maintain its successful operational and entomological programs while at the same time increasing modernization and accountability. Many new programs have evolved, and even more are on the design table. A new program the district has developed is a capability of performing DNA testing in our laboratory with a real-time PCR. This allows us to go out into your community, capture mosquitoes that could be positive, bring them back to the lab, identify them that morning, test them that afternoon, and if they're positive for West Nile virus, we can go out and control them that night. We can do everything within 24 hours. Right now it takes 10 days to receive the information back from the state. In addition, 6 months ago, we established a new mosquito surveillance program using a special ovipositional trap, trying to capture the eggs that are laid by female mosquitoes. This summer, both in Fresno and Madera County, a very serious vector of disease around the world called Aedes aegypti mosquito was uncovered. We also, with one of our ovitraps, uncovered the same mosquito in the Holy Cross Cemetery in Menlo Park. Because of that, we put out a press release with the County of San Mateo Public Health Officer, Scott Morrow, and we have been doing a door-to-door inspection surrounding that cemetery. We've uncovered 7 other homes that are positive for this mosquito, and we are now instituting control measures that will be going on this week. We are also performing a major review and retooling of our rodent, wildlife, and tick surveillance programs for Lyme disease. With all these program reviews, we also have experienced an exhaustive series of financial and administrative reviews and audits over the last 2.5 years. As a result of these audits and reviews, the district has implemented all of the financial and administrative recommendations that have been offered. Those include adopting new financial policies, adopting new administrative policies, performing criminal background checks on all new staff members, performing credit checks on all financial staff, performing drug testing on all new staff, contracting with a new auditor, contracting with a human resource company, adopting new extremely restrictive policies on district credit card usage, contracted for an internal control audit, developed an internal control procedure manual, and expanded the district monthly report that goes to each appointing authority, and I'm sure Trustee Snyder is getting those district reports to you on a monthly basis. The district continues to stress the most effective form of governance for a mosquito and vector control district is a sole function, independent special district. Your mosquito and vector control district is county-wide. The county environmental health also transferred their remaining rodent sewer baiting programs to the district in 2008. Thus, all mosquito and vector control programs are handled by your district. And it was also noted in all previous LAFCO reviews that your district is effectively providing mosquito and vector control services to best meet the public health and safety needs of the county residents. The district also fully supports the current form of governance with a board of trustees, where each city and the county appoint a member to the board as outlined in the Health and Safety Code. These trustees give the district direct access to the cities where information can be transferred each month by a number of communication tools that are selected by each appointing authority. The trustees also bring an outstanding array of experience and skills to the governing board. The county trustee is a certified public accountant and is the finance director at the ACT Theater in San Francisco. He is on our finance committee. Foster City, Rick Wyckoff, trustee, is a prior city manager and city council member, also on our finance committee and policy committee. Pacifica trustee is a prior city mayor. East Palo Alto trustee is a prior council member. Hillsborough trustee is the chief of infectious disease at Kaiser Permanente. Brisbane trustee has an MBA in accounting and finance and a doctorate in medical sociology, also on our finance and policy committee. And the San Mateo trustee is in code enforcement. Other trustees are in healthcare, own local businesses, research scientists, and educators. The district is also looking at bringing Brent Ives from BHI Management Consulting to the district to further educate the trustees on governance, communications, and supervisory management. In our opinion, the diversity of trustees appointed by the cities and the county provide the best form of governance for a mosquito and vector control district. And now, coupled with all the new internal controls that were instituted, our auditors consider our program to be outstanding. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Gay. Could we ask you some questions?
Absolutely.
Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Grocott?
I just have a few. You had mentioned, could you just highlight any work you do with other counties? You mentioned Menlo Park and the mosquitoes. I imagine, the mosquitoes don't recognize county lines, and Menlo Park is close to Santa Clara. Could you talk about that?
We work very closely with Santa Clara County because we're on their border, and right now they're having a very significant West Nile virus outbreak in Santa Clara County. They've had 9 major fogging operations going on. They don't have the equipment to do all of that, so they borrow ours. So we provide them our equipment to do their fogging with. We do a great many programs together on the salt ponds, the reclamations that are going on out here in the bay. We've been working together on those. We have another program called Controlling Cordgrass, which is going on around the bay, and much of that is also done down in Santa Clara County. All the coastal region districts all get together on a monthly basis, and we look at how we can support each other in our operations. With the advent and finding of Aedes aegypti in Menlo Park, we were very concerned that our staffing was not going to be adequate. So we contacted Santa Clara County and asked if they would have individuals that could support us if needed. We haven't needed them at this point. We did receive an individual from Public Health who's been helping us on a daily basis, and the state is providing information and support to us. So we actually have a very good cooperative program with Santa Clara.
The other two things, rather than put them as questions, I'll just put them as comments. To this council member, it would appear that your title of Mosquito Abatement District is a bit dated, considering all the things that you went through, that you do, and how you picked up things from the county. And I would just think at some point you'd want to change that, just as a matter of properly communicating with the voters and so forth what exactly your district does. When I read the report, you know, when this whole thing came up with the grand jury and so forth, and I read that, and it talked about, as you noted, about all vector-borne diseases. It opened my eyes to the fact that you're doing more than just, you know, trying to mitigate problems with mosquitoes. And then lastly, my last comment is I was a bit surprised when I had a situation in my neighborhood where every time I took my dog for a walk, I'd bring her home and find like 20 fleas all over her. And I figured out where they were coming from because I watched her one time, and you know, she was doing her business, and I just watched all these fleas just light upon her. And I actually called the city manager to find out if you guys did anything about that, and I was surprised to find out the answer was no. So that can be a problem at different seasons, right here in our community, and I'm sure in others.
The name of the district is San Mateo County Mosquito and Vector Control District. We changed the name when the programs from the county were transferred to us in 2008. And we can look into controlling those fleas for you.
Other questions? Karen? Ms. Clapper?
Yes. Been looking at these reports as they get dropped off in my mailbox each time, and this same question has come up in my mind several times. I'm trying to get a feeling for, this has to do with the consolidated fund statement, the balance sheet, and also I'm looking at the latest one that was issued here on this, on the iPad, and also the district profit and loss. And so it shows like total in checking and savings of $6.4 million. And on a regular basis, at least for the last year, there's an income of almost $1.2 million in excess, in excess of the costs. And I'm wondering if there's something about what the district does that requires the setting aside of reserves for replacing vehicles or rebuilding buildings, that there are such large cash balances that are required in your operation. So I was curious if you could talk a little bit more about that financial aspect. Maybe not now, but at some point in the future we could get more information.
Can do it right now if you like.
Time constraint is, but
Please do, because I have the same question.
We're doing a seismic retrofitting of our parking garage, and so we budgeted for that this last fiscal year, and we were not able to get the permit with the city of Burlingame in time to start the construction to get the project done in last fiscal year. It has been done this fiscal year right now. And we also are in the middle of a programmatic environmental impact report it's a cooperative program between 9 counties. And that program report, we budgeted more for that project than we needed. And it's been carrying over now into this fiscal year. So it's going to go probably until December. We also had 2 directors of the district leave the district. And we brought on new individuals at a much lower rate. And we didn't bring them on for a period of 3 to 4 months. We had acting people in those positions, which saved the district money. And that was and we had 2 vehicles that we scheduled to purchase and we didn't purchase them. So there were a number of reasons of why that was the way it was. We also budgeted $250,000 for pesticides. And we didn't have to use that amount because the dikes out on Bear Island were broken, as you well know, and now the tidal is coming in and out, and we're not having to treat out there on Bear Island as much. So our pesticide account, we're probably down to about $160,000 that we're only spending last fiscal year. So there were a number of reasons of why that was.
Other questions, Mr. Collins?
None at this time.
Mr. Robert?
Yeah, actually, my question was for Ms. Schneider. Is that okay to ask her?
Why don't we finish with Mr. Gay first? And
Okay.
then I'm sorry, just to buttress it or to ask a little bit more. So what is your normal reserve then, Mr. Gay? What would you expect in a normal time to have in reserve in cash?
About $4.9 million.
So in effect, you basically have 1 year reserve all the time. That's what you'd like to have, 1 year reserve? Because that's apparently what your budget is, at least
Yes,
it
the
was
Health
last
and
year.
Safety Code allowed districts to carry 60% of their budget over, and when they redid the Health and Safety Code with Senate Bill 1588, they changed that. And most districts now carry a year to a year and a half of revenue. The West Nile virus, I think, is what prompted everybody to have a special reserve account for emerging diseases that occur, and the state allows us to carry 30% of our operating budget as a special reserve account. The district Finance Committee will be looking into that this year. Because of our revenues that we currently have, the benefit assessment was not raised at all for it's been 3 years now, there's been no raising of the assessment. And the special tax that your city pays of $3.74 hasn't changed either.
Okay, I would hope not, considering you have $6 million or had $6 million in the bank. So just curious. Again, we're looking at a small snapshot, not the details the Finance Committee has. Ms. Clapper asked the question: how much just for curiosity, how much did the parking garage cost or the parking thing cost?
The seismic retrofitting of the parking garage is going to cost about $220,000.
Okay. But anyway, as you said, you're required to keep a year, and most keep more for other things. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, now Mr. Olbert has a question.
Actually, that discussion prompted a question.
You want to talk to Trustee Schneider?
No, actually, it's for you, sir.
Okay.
One of the risks for any organization when surpluses start building up or reserves start building up is not necessarily that money gets squandered, but that tasks get taken on that aren't necessarily mission critical. And I'm going to use as an example, and I don't mean to pick on Mr. Grocot's dog with fleas, but let's say hypothetically, Lucy's fleas, but let's say hypothetically that wasn't really a major public health issue, but you had the money around, so you would do it. What are your processes and decision-making and prioritization-making processes for making sure you don't stray into that kind of area? And that, if there really is truly a sufficient surplus, maybe you move for lower assessments from the member communities or what have you?
To answer that in 2 phases. The first phase is the district has a strategic plan, an 8-year plan, and your trustee Schneider is on that committee. And that plan helps give us ideas on directions of where we want the district to go and the areas that are needed, depending on what's needed in the community. Our big concern that we're having right now, of course, is Aedes aegypti. That's in Menlo Park. But we also have big concerns with ticks and Lyme disease on the coast. As you well know, CDC has estimated that the percentage of people positive with Lyme disease is a third what its actual rates are. So for us, we try and make sure that we look at and analyze what diseases are present in the community and what is the risk of having your residents getting those diseases. Some of the diseases are just enzootic diseases that are out there, like bubonic plague you have on San Bruno Mountain. We monitor that 2 or 3 times a year just to make sure it doesn't get anywhere past the deer mice population. If it does, then we have to enact a major control program. Same with hantavirus. You have hantavirus that's on the watershed. You have hantavirus that's located on San Bruno Mountain. And you have hantavirus that's located on the coast. We also uncovered a squirrel in the city of Atherton was positive with plague. When these things come up, then we just have to do an assessment on what is the risk of this in getting into our community. I think that's probably the most important part of our strategic plan. But you're in a very unique area here on the peninsula because you have San Francisco Airport. That's very close. You have the ports, and you have a huge population here that travel throughout the world. And it's very easy for them to bring back endemic diseases when they travel to Southeast Asia, Africa, Central America. And right now there's a major dengue outbreak going on in Southeast Asia. So it'd be really easy for somebody to go there, get infested, bring it back, and if they were to come in contact with Aedes aegypti in Menlo Park, we have one person positive right now in Foster City with dengue fever, and they've traveled to Redwood City to get treated at Kaiser. Well, that's not close enough to get in contact with the flight range of those mosquitoes in Menlo Park. But if it was, and they did contact, it'd be really easy for that mosquito to become positive for dengue fever and then transmit it to all the kids and residents that live right around the location where that mosquito is found.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you have a question for Ms. Snyder?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gay, very much
Thank you.
for coming.
Thank you, Ms. Schneider. My question actually, when I was reviewing the materials, one of the things that's always struck me as challenging for the oversight of the mosquito abatement and vector abatement district is the sheer size of the oversight board, a large number of people. And so I just wanted to make sure that there's nothing that you feel we ought to be lobbying for organizationally, just to make sure that things are being as efficient and as effective as they can be.
I think it is difficult having a board that is that large, it's true, because board members are afraid to speak up. However, the complexion of the board is changing. 2 of the board members their terms have not been renewed from their appointed entities. And we have some new people coming who have come on, as explained to you, who are better qualified. Although it's still difficult. The communication is difficult in meetings. But we do our best.
I'm quite sure, and I know that, again, you certainly have as an individual, and thank you again for your role in this whole situation. Let me just mention that when you're in the process of looking at strategic plans and whatnot, there are governance models that can perhaps address some of the issues of having such a large oversight board. Executive group, executive boards, and whatnot. I'm not trying to recommend one or the other, but just I would encourage you and your colleagues to have a full and frank discussion about what you think would work best for doing the oversight role, and see whether there's some changes you might want to make.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Snyder. Thank you, Mr. Gay. Appreciate it. Okay, the next item we have on the agenda is public comment. People wishing to address City Council on matters not on the posted agenda. We'd like to keep this to a couple of 3 minutes for each speaker. I have 3 speaker cards. First one is Naweed Amin, I believe. Sorry?
This lady can go prior to me.
No, Mr. Amin, you're first. You're up. Would you like to speak? You have 3 minutes. Later on, you can. We'll take you and then just fill out a card later. Not a problem. Okay?
Hello, council members, city staff, members of the public. To my understanding, the city staff has provided you with a copy of the document. with 3 ideas that I proposed to the city of San Carlos. And so today I want to talk about 4 things. I understand I have a very limited period of time, so I'll be brief and concise to the point. The first idea is, and I've given an example, for example, the city of San Mateo has listed their city council, commission, and committee members all on a single piece of paper, along with what times they meet and basic information. So I would suggest that the city of San Carlos adopt something like that, where it's a 1-page or 2-page PDF file, and that could also be incorporated into anytime there's a new council member, or there's a new committee member, new commission member, new board member, or if just the public is interested. And I would highly advise that. Now, the second item is the idea of a mascot. Now, to the best of my understanding, the city of San Carlos does not have a mascot or a person that's city approved that could be in costume. The idea would be at venues, city approved venues, festivals, anywhere where there's a city presence, or you want there to be a community presence. This person in a costume or a mascot could advocate and will naturally generate publicity and curiosity from onlookers. And so they could ask questions about the city of San Carlos. And so the person in the costume or mascot could answer those questions, directing them to the various city departments, answering basic questions, things like that. Now, the third idea that I propose is the idea of having a city of San Carlos web stores. Various cities, towns across the country have such a device, an instrument. The instrument would essentially be a web store that does not require physical presence. The cost is very minimal comparing to having, a physical presence such as a brick and mortar store. So the idea would be you would sell city-approved merchandise. That could be apparel, it'd be coffee mugs, something easy to put the logo on, things like that, as well as the city web store would also allow the public to donate. For example, if I like trees and I like San Carlos parks, I could donate to the Parks and Recreation Department. If I like the police department and the sheriff's office doing an excellent job, I could donate to the sheriff's office. Now, this would be through a button highlighting various options through this City of San Carlos web store. And so I'd ask you to add these 3 items as discussion items. I'm not asking for an action. And I do understand that it's certainly within your authority. Sometime during the meeting, hopefully any council member makes a motion to add these 3 items at a later council meeting. Hopefully someone seconds that. Now, the last but not least, although I'm not here in this capacity, I just want to thank you guys for supporting the sheriff's office. In fact, I'm pictured on one of the flyers here. I am a current sheriff's office volunteer, and the flyers are obviously right outside the countertop that's outside the council chambers. And again, although I'm not here in this professional capacity, I'd encourage you to continue to support your sheriff's office. They certainly like to hear from you. Provide feedback, provide constructive advice, and so forth. And I want to congratulate you for your support towards them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amin. The next speaker card I have is Mary Montalbano.
Hello, Councilman. I'm Mary Montalbano, and I would like to reintroduce...
Ms. Montalbano, I apologize. Could you move just a little bit that
Over
direction?
here?
Perfect. Because we're
Is
trying
this
to
good?
perfect. We're trying to
Okay.
record it. Thank you so much.
All right, I would like to reintroduce and propose the idea that I read in the local paper just recently regarding the San Carlos apparel with the logo saying, "The City of Good Living." I, for one, and many of my friends think this was a great idea and a pride to wear. We have many functions, such as wine festivals, jazz festivals, craft fairs, and parents of school and San Carlos sports teams that would love to wear something showing our town pride. Let's look into this again and revisit this proposal. This does not have to be a cost to San Carlos, but a choice for individuals to purchase their own, as well as staff members, if made available. The city has a booth at every city function, and orders can be taken, or online website can be established to order such apparel. And I notice that you have, Mr. Criselli, one that says the City of Good Living.
We do, and it's available right now at
Is it
Chamber of
available?
Commerce.
With the Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber
And
of
is it
Commerce
for
has it.
sale?
It certainly is, ma'am.
It is?
Yep.
And it's, where do you have it advertised at?
Chamber of Commerce does the advertising.
You do?
It should be on the website, too, I would assume, but I don't know.
You can buy a hat, too.
If I had to.
No. Just the hats?
Through the Chamber of Commerce.
Okay. Well, I'd like to see it reintroduced as far as a proposal to generate something for San Carlos, because I, for one, would like to wear something, as I'm very proud to live in the City of Good Living.
Thank you
Okay,
very much for your
thank you.
comments. The next speaker card I have is Andre Carpio. Mr. Carpio? Appreciate it, Mr. Carpio, if you could keep your comments to about 3 minutes, please.
My name is André Carpio. I come from Emeryville, and I have been coming since 2003 about the theft of my solar car. The reason I came tonight is because I learned recently, it's a hearsay and speculation, that at the time of the theft of my solar car, the Capitol City Council instructed the police to let the thief get away with my car. And of course, it's a position that is difficult to understand, but since I haven't been able to recover my solar car, and since the police and since the City Council hasn't done anything to recover my solar car, then I'm inclined to believe that the story that I heard, that I was told, is true. And I would ask Mr. Godko, how come he does not know? Maybe he's part of it. That's probably why the letter from Chief Rathaus came about and explaining a version that is not true. And I'm contesting that. And this is very difficult. And I think this is very critical for Mr. Grocko. Since he's seeking re-election, here we have a high level of fraudulent concealment. It's a civil conspiracy to steal my solar car. It's a historical item. And I'm the inventor and the manufacturer. I'm the owner, and next month I'm going to pay for the insurance for a thief to have my car back someplace. And this is something you should do, or this should be part of the campaign literature. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carpio. Did you want to speak, ma'am? Please come up to the microphone. And then later on, if you'd fill out a card and hand it to the city clerk, that would be terrific. Thank you.
I too read the article about the uniforms for the staff and employees, and if they want to purchase something, that's fine, but to use city funds for that, I think, is a total waste of money, and I don't see where we would spend between almost $10,000 and $27,000 for optional uniforms for the staff. If we have money in the reserves, I think the better way to use that money would be get the Scoot back. The Scoot takes care of getting rid of all that extra traffic around the schools. It takes care of getting rid of a lot of pollution. And for those that took the Scoot when we had it before into the city, it frees up a lot of parking places. So I'd say we nix the uniforms if we have to pay for them. If people want to buy them, that's a different story, and get the Scoot back.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else, excuse me, wishing to speak on public comment or items not on the posted agenda? Sure, ma'am. Come on up. That's fine. That's fine. It's good to have friends.
Back to the uniforms again. With so many programs being cut, the school, the fire, the police, the park, the senior citizen, the money that was allotted for the uniforms should not go to uniforms. It should pick up where everything, the programs that have been cut. If they want a uniform, have these people, no jeans, no tank tops, no sneakers, no shorts. You have a uniform. They'll come properly dressed, and you'll have a uniform. But to pay that kind of money when other services are being cut drastically, it's crazy. I don't even know who thought of that idea, but I hope he had a terrible night's sleep.
Thank you for your comments. Just to be clear, no money was ever allocated for this. This was just a discussion item, so just to be clear. All right, anyone else wishing to speak on public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Item 7 is the consent calendar. Consent calendar items are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. No separate discussion on these items unless members of the council, staff, or public request specific items to be removed for separate action. Is there anyone on the council who wishes to remove any of the items?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I wanted to remove item C and F.
C and F. Anything else? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for the other items.
Mr. Mayor, I'll recommend that we approve items 7A, B, D, E, G, and H. Are there?
That's it.
Is that it?
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any further discussion on those items? Hearing none, roll call, please. Item C and item F are removed from the excuse me, from the motion. Everything else is in the motion.
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Olbert?
Yes.
Mayor Grisilli?
Yes. All right, as is our usual situation, we'll put those to the end of the meeting. Moving on, item 8, unfinished business. Consideration of denying request for waiver or adjustment of below market rate housing requirements to Transit Village project pursuant to Municipal Code Section 18.16.130. Someone going to be giving a report on this? Mr. Civet? No, Mr. Rubens.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this is a follow-up to an item on at your last agenda regarding the request by Legacy Partners LLC for a adjustment, reduction, or waiver of the below market rate housing requirements set forth in the municipal code. The staff report identifies, attaches the last meeting agenda and has a revised resolution as directed by the council. You might recall you tentatively denied the waiver request at your last meeting and directed us to bring back a resolution incorporating the information both in the original staff report and as presented at the last meeting. So that's what you have before you tonight, where the staff is recommending that you adopt the resolution denying the request.
Okay, questions for Mr. Rubens from the dais? Okay, none right now. We might be later. Would the developer like to speak? You don't have to. I'll 2 minutes. I'll put you on the clock for that.
Hi, Jeff Bird with Legacy Partners. I just wanted to remind everyone there's been maybe some confusion out there. We've never sought to have a waiver of any requirement. Our core objective here is, as we've gone through this process over the last many years, we've been encouraged to figure out how to provide affordable housing, not just pay a fee. We desire to do that. We would like to work with the city to do that. We think that's a good public-private cooperation. The problem is the way the ordinance is structured, the box that it says do this or this. If you do the affordable housing, it is not possible. It's not financially possible. So we just like to, we believe we can do this. We think we can work with staff and ultimately come back to the council with a proposal that allows us to provide a large number of affordable housing units at levels that are, call it financially comparable to the fee, so that the city gets the most out of it. We do a good thing for the community, and we don't just pay a fee and move along.
Okay, great, thank you. Only a minute and 5 seconds. Wow, that was good. I have one speaker card. I'm sorry, Mr. Civet.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to add to that. Since the last meeting, we received some financial data from Legacy Partners. As you will recall, there was a pro forma analysis that was done by the city. Actually, it was done by RSG, our economic consultant, and it had some information about, really the study was to assess if the project was significantly reduced, would it be financially feasible still as a project? And that's the reason the city undertook that pro forma. And I think it was added to the BMR staff report at the last meeting for informational purposes. Since the last meeting, we've received some additional information from the developer, and city staff can look at that information going forward and talk to the developer about it, but we haven't analyzed it.
Okay.
Just wanted to
Question, Mr. Olbert?
to that.
Mr. Savay, could you share with us when this additional information from Legacy Partners was provided to the staff?
In the last week or so.
Okay, so it was not therefore factored into the staff report that we saw?
No, it was not.
So it was late enough in the cycle that
Yes.
could not
Yeah.
happen? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, is there anyone wishing, I have one speaker card. Person wishing to speak, Glenn Gelino.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I would like to encourage you to maintain the city's position on its current ordinance. I've seen in the past with other issues that every time somebody lawyers up and threatens to sue the city, we seem to back off. We have force of law in an ordinance, and I think it's prudent to follow that. If it's an improper law, then it should be changed. But to give waivers or relax the rules just because somebody threatens to sue the city, I think is inappropriate. Otherwise, anytime an issue comes along that somebody wants to do something that's not in compliance with an ordinance, all they got to do is threaten to sue the city. So based on that, those are my comments, and I'd like to see you hold them to it.
Thank you, Mr. Gelino, for your comments. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? Yes? Mr. Crabb? Would you fill out a card later for us, please, David? Thank you.
I was hoping I wouldn't have to speak tonight, but Honorable Mayor and Vice Mayor and members of the council. Very quickly, we laid out our argument 2 weeks ago about why affordable housing is important. Sierra Club still backs affordable housing, so we would urge you to vote against the waiver. If Legacy has a problem with this project, I mean, why can't we look at working with Samtrans and Legacy and so on and making some of that property available to a nonprofit developer so that we reduce the Legacy chunk of it, give the rest of it to a nonprofit, and maybe one of those blocks, and that will solve your low-income market, and it'll give you a really serious low income rather than moderate that they claim is low income. But anyway, the bottom line is Sierra Club would like you to vote no to the waiver. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Yes, ma'am. And would you also fill out a card, please, after? Thank you. And just hand it to the city clerk after you speak.
So I'm Vanessa Nevela, and I guess I'm confused, so I'm just here to ask questions. The last council meeting, we were kind of leaning towards denying the waiver, and now it sounds like maybe we're not leaning
No, the
towards that,
request is to
or-
deny the waiver from staff.
Okay, so good. Great, that's exactly what I would like. Although I don't think it really addresses the affordability issue. I unfortunately I don't know if citizens are allowed to show things, and I didn't get this done in time, but maybe I can submit it. But I did a little analysis with a graph, and it sort of showed, what Legacy was proposing and what the city ordinance said, and that if Legacy complies with the ordinance, probably what it will really look like in terms of affordability. And my guess is, or my sort of educated guess from the analysis, is that there really won't be any affordable housing for median or moderate income people. It'll be the 42 units for the low income, and then it'll be high income. All the other 238 units will be high income. in order to make it financially viable for them. And, I find that problematic, that, basically the sort of median level of income people, which are paramedics, police officers, firefighters, electricians, plumbers, teachers, librarians, are just kind of thrown out there to just uncontrollable rents. And so anyway, that's my preference, is that you at least vote no to the waiver. And
You can give
is there a
whatever you
way
have.
to?
Yeah, just give it to the city clerk, and she will process it and get it to all of us.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? Okay. So, council?
Mr. Mayor, before
Yes, I'm
we
sorry.
begin, I just had a factual clarification I'd like to make sure was in the record. I understand that what was delivered to the city staff was a critique of the RSG study that you saw in the staff report, but it was not new financial information on the feasibility of the project. I wanted to make sure that was clear
Okay.
in the record.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rubens. Yes, Mr. Olbert.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think, despite what Mr. Rubens just said, I think we might want to think about continuing this item to our next meeting to have staff have an opportunity to finish their review of the critique of RSG's analysis. Frankly, I'm amazed at the incomplete nature of this application. I mean, our ordinance is a longstanding ordinance, and it's very clear about what you're supposed to provide, and we've been bending over backwards to make sure that the record is as complete as possible and give people an opportunity to fulfill the obligations of the ordinance. But we also need to recognize, although the gentleman is not here tonight, we also heard a litany last time from Legacy's attorney that basically I interpreted as them sharpening up their knives to explain how they were going to sue us. Given that, I don't feel under any compulsion tonight to act on this. Give staff time to look at it, and maybe they come back and say, we haven't learned anything additional from Legacy's rebuttal, and then we can act on it.
Okay. Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak?
I would just like to hear a response from staff to Mr. Olbert's questions.
Well, I think I understand the question, Councilmember Collins, is whether or not you could move forward with the resolution tonight based upon that information. And I think you could. It's within your discretion to direct us to add to our resolution a response to whatever the critique was to the RSG study. But I think that you could move forward with the resolution as proposed tonight based upon the fact that there was no new feasibility information provided with that critique of the RSG study. But again, it's the council's discretion on that. But I think you could, the way the staff report's worded and the way that the current resolution's worded, move forward tonight.
Okay, thank you. Other comments, questions of staff or
I
or
just wanted
I'm sorry, go ahead. Sure.
I just wanted to respond to that. Mr. Rubens, isn't it true, though, that this resolution is already a revised resolution from what we had 2 weeks ago?
Yes, we incorporated the public comment at the last meeting and made specific findings related to the project, and it is an updated resolution from the original.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? With that, I'll entertain a motion then.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that we approve resolution number 2013-94,
94.
a resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos denying Legacy Partners Residential LLC's request for a reduction, adjustment, or waiver of affordable housing requirements.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Mr. Olbert.
Since it appears that we're going to be moving forward with this denial, which I am fine with denying the request, I'm going to vote in favor of denying it, and hopefully we'll find out that there's nothing in the record that we would like to have put in.
Any other comments? Yes, Mr. Grocott.
I would just care to repeat what I said just quickly at the last council meeting, that all of us know the board members of the Samtrans board. We go to different events with them, and I think if this even went to the Samtrans board as some type of advisory vote or something on including affordable housing on this site, it would probably be a unanimous vote in favor of it. So I think that's something to keep in mind.
Okay. Other comments? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
Mayor Grisilli?
Yes. Okay, thank you. Moving on, new business. Item 9A, receive an update on implementation of commissioner orientation process and adopt a resolution to adopt the commissioner's handbook.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Crystal Moy, City Clerk / Director of Community Relations. At the last City Council meeting, at the last City Council Strategic Plan Retreat in February of this year, Council developed an objective to develop and implement a commissioner orientation process. So I am before you tonight to update you on that objective. In our past practices, after the closing of a filing period, the city clerk would coordinate a time with the applicants for the interview with the council. After the interviews, council usually appointed that evening, and a letter of congratulation was sent out from the clerk's office, along with important document and forms to fill out. From there, each department liaison was responsible for informing the commissioner on all important guidelines and such as the Brown Act and Public Records Law. So it's in order to ensure a more consistent and thorough process for all new commissioners, staff has developed a new commissioner orientation process. As outlined there, and I'll go over a little bit more detail in the next slide. So the first step in the new orientation process is the meeting with staff. The staff, city manager, and department liaison will meet with all the applicants, and the chair of the commission is invited to sit in as well. The purpose of this meeting is to provide candidates with some background information on the city as well as the commission that they're applying for. The meeting will also be an opportunity for the applicants to ask questions of city staff and to gain a sense of what they can expect procedurally during the interview with the council. Should council request, after this meeting, staff will be available to provide feedback on the applicants. The next step is the interview with the council. Commission chair will be invited to this interview to sit in, and staff will provide an extensive list to the council with questions that they would be able to select from. After the council appoints a commissioner, the clerk's office will schedule an orientation with them where they'll be able to sit down with the city clerk, the city attorney, and staff liaison to review the Brown Act, conflict of interest, public records law, and the city clerk I will work with them to set up a city email address and administer the oath of office, and also provide the code of conduct policy as well as the commissioner handbook. Key projects will be outlined by the department liaison. And the last step for the commissioner orientation process would be the welcome reception. This serves as an informal meet and greet for the commissioner, and it is coordinated by the respective departments. So these two events provide the commissioner with important information that's needed in their new role, but also kind of gives them a sense of belonging to their new commission. As part of the new orientation process, staff has prepared a commissioner handbook that is before you tonight for your consideration. It serves as a single source document that pulls together information from several existing documents. And it's designed as an easy-to-use reference for our commissioners, covering information from the structure of the city, information on each of the commissions, commission memberships, that outlines the process that I just spoke about on the orientation and meeting with staff. The operating procedures, so standard operating procedures in commission meetings, and also goes over in detail the imposed restraints. So this is the city's first generation commission handbook, and it's our hope that it will be continually updated and amended over time with council's comments and suggestions. And that actually concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Questions?
Yes.
Clapper?
So what we're calling the orientation process here applies to the application period as well as after the actual appointment to the
Correct.
commission. Okay, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't making an assumption that I shouldn't be. Thank you.
Mr. Olbert? No? Mr. Grocott? Mr. Collins? I'm sorry, Mr. Collins?
Thank you, Crystal. Just curious, you may have gone over this, and maybe my mind was wandering, but who actually does the orientation? Would that be you?
Sits in on it. The city, I will be there as well as the city attorney and staff liaison for that commission.
Okay. And as a former member of the Planning Commission and EDAC, I can tell you that I welcome these changes, because when I was on EDAC, I didn't know I was subject to the Brown Act.
Oh, and the commission chair is also invited to sit in on that as well.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Mr. Grocott, any questions? Mr. Olbert? Okay. All right, thank you. So this item is before us. Do I hear a motion? Or excuse me, anyone wishing to speak on this item? I should make sure that anyone wishing to speak from the public? Okay. Hearing none. Entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move we approve Resolution 2013-95, resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos adopting the City of San Carlos Commissioners Handbook.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion on this matter? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Olbert?
Yes.
Mayor Grisilli?
Yes, thank you. Next item on our agenda is item 9B, consideration of adopting updated salary and benefits resolution for the management group. Mr. Maltby? Excuse me.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Jeff Maltby, City Manager. This item before you this evening is a salary and benefit resolution for the management employees of the city. The previous salary and benefit resolution expired July 1st of this year and was in place for 1 year prior. The summary of changes included in this proposed 2-year salary and benefit resolution are a 2-year term, which would end June 30th, 2015, a salary adjustment of 3% July 1st, 2013, and 3% July 1st, 2014. The Section 125 Flex Plan benefit, which in layman's terms is the medical benefit offered to employees. Employees will pay the first 2% of any increase in the health premium. So in other words, if Kaiser raises their rates 7%, the employees would pay the first 2% of that increase, and the city would pay the remaining 5%. The current standard that's been in place in the existing salary and benefit resolution were that the employees would pay the first 5%. There's also a provision in this agreement that would take place if a management employee were fired, a severance package in exchange for all the employees in the in the management unit becoming at-will employees. So they'll be operating under at-will employment for the entire collection of employees. The cost of these on an annual basis is approximately $100,000. In terms of the increase, that covers all the economic elements in the salary and benefit increase over what is currently in place now. This gives you some indication of the general fund revenues the last few years. We've seen approximately 9% growth over the last 5 years, with significant growth coming in the last 12 to 18 months. And I'm showing you this slide because I think it's important to put into context for the council as well as the public why we're recommending these increases. Going back approximately 4 or 5 years ago, when the city was in deep financial distress, as many cities were as we entered the Great Recession, the employees were asked to contribute, in many instances, 5% of their total compensation package, so a number greater than their salary component of that package. The management employees contributed 8% of their total compensation was given back to help the city balance its budget during those tough times. I think part of that bargain and part of the reason that I'm recommending this increase for you tonight is because when we asked our employees a number of years ago for their help and assistance, they gave it because they believe in the organization, they believe in the community, and they believe that they have a responsibility to help balance the books as well as the council as a significant portion of our ongoing annual operating expenses. When revenues are up, it's time to go the other way and begin to keep pace with inflation and offer the employees a fair compensation package. What we did a number of years ago and what continues to be in place today are some pretty significant changes in the benefit package which is offered our employees. We reduced that package in many, many ways, more ways than I'm going to go into tonight. Those changes remain in place this evening and should, in my opinion, remain in place for the foreseeable future. This will give you some indication of the miscellaneous salaries and benefits and what this picture looks like for the city over the same number of years of the revenue I just shown you. This does include, obviously, changes in how we staff and provide services within the organization, including contracting for a shared service arrangement with Redwood City for fire, as well as a shared service relationship with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office for police. With that in mind, I'm recommending what is before you with one change for you to consider, and that is Section 17, which contains language about provisions that would take place if other units of the city were granted increases, often referred to as Me Too language. And I am requesting for your consideration that you strike Section 17 from the attached salary and benefit resolution if you are so inclined to make a motion for consideration of approval this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Malpe. Questions for Mr. Malpe? Ms. Clapper?
I just want to make sure I'm clear on the scale on these charts, the numbers that are on the left-hand side of this slide as well as the previous slide.
Are in millions.
In millions. Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. Olbert?
Yes, Mr. Malpe, just one first quick question. The $100,000 that you were talking about, the all-in cost, can you refresh my memory? Is that per year or is that for the 2-year contract?
That is per year.
So it's $100,000 the first year and $100,000 roughly on top of it the next year.
Well, yes.
Okay. And then this will put you on the spot a little bit, but my review of the city's financial situation makes me believe that this is a reasonable thing to consider doing. I'd just like to get your sense of whether you think you're obviously recommending it, you're reasonably comfortable with it, or are you a little nervous about it, or?
I would say I'm very comfortable with it. I think in terms of timing, this is coming at the right time for the city. And again, if there are any employees of the organization that are listening, that's no guarantee that, some years from now, we may be back in front of them asking for assistance in balancing the budget because the economy's taken a downturn or the state has diverted money from the city or any number of reasons that are beyond the control of any of us in the room. In fact, I think given a long-term view of terms of finances, and the city should have a very long-term view, that's likely to happen one day. But right now, in terms of the next 2-year cycle, I think this is a very reasonable approach to the compensation package, particularly given the fact that it still contains within it many provisions, many provisions of the benefit reductions that were put in place a number of years ago.
Thank you. Just one other brief comment. It's for the benefit of the members of the public. We obviously, as part of closed session negotiations, have a lot of discussions about things. So, to some extent, when you see a dearth of questions from the dais, it doesn't necessarily reflect a lack of interest. It reflects the fact that we've talked about this stuff at great length.
And I can testify that all 5 of the council members had many questions throughout this process.
Other questions for staff? Mr. Collins?
I have one. Mr. Malpe, I'm just curious, in this management group, how many of the employees that took this, took the 8% compensation reduction in whenever it was, 2009, 2010, are still here?
You know, I couldn't answer that question. I have not looked at it that way myself. A fair number, more than half, but beyond that, I couldn't answer specifically.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Malpe.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak on this item? Please step up, and then we have, Crystal, you already have that name, just add a card for it.
Just for clarification purposes regarding possible adoption of this resolution, what is the number of employees affected?
I think it's 20, Mr. Malpe?
It's 17 employees with the possibility for 19.
Okay.
And the second question would be, are they all full-time, or is there a differentiation between part-time, full-time?
Mr. Malpe, they're all full-time?
These are all full-time employees.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? Okay. Seeing none, Council, what's your preference on this item? And we'll have discussion after the motion, if we need some.
Do you want a motion?
Please, if you could, that would be good.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I'll recommend that, or move that we approve Resolution 2013-96.
Correct.
Resolution of the City Council of San Carlos adopting the salary and benefit resolution between the City of San Carlos and the management unit.
And excluding item
And
17?
excluding item 17.
Okay, just
Anything
thought
else we need to?
Right.
Is that okay?
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion? Comments? Mr. Grocott?
Well, I made most of my comments in closed session.
I'm giving you an opportunity
I
to
know.
do it in public.
Yeah, I'm going to vote no. I think it's a bit generous, the increase. I always keep in mind, for one thing, too, that we do have steps in addition to these types of raises. There's each employee is in a step program, so if you're at the bottom during your years of service, you can move up to the top and you get an increase that way. And then I think the biggest thing, though, is 2 items. One, we keep looking at things where we have cost increases and we pass those on through rates and fees to our citizens. And I would love to be able to have some money to mitigate some of those items with. I've talked about that in the past. And then the other item is that while we appear to be very strong financially, I think one of the big unanswered questions we have, and it's not entirely our own fault, but it's because of our situation with CalPERS, is our unfunded liabilities and exactly where we stand with those liabilities and trying to pay those down. Should we be setting money aside and keeping a reserve fund for that? I think that if we could include those numbers, it would give us a more true picture of our financial status. And then thirdly, I said there would be 2, but I thought of another one that I had mentioned before, and that is just on our capital improvement program. There was a time where we used to take all of our franchise fee money and put it towards capital improvements.
Could we speak to this item, though, Mr. Grocott?
Well, it does speak to this item because what I'm saying is that this is just a group of 17 employees. We have a lot more to go from here, and this is just $100,000 and an increase per year. If you look at it all, I'm weighing, in other words, I'm weighing our operations costs against what our capital improvement costs, and that's an area where we've been remiss over the years for different reasons, partly because of the economy, and so that's what I'm weighing.
You and I sometimes, have philosophical differences. Sometimes we don't. This time we do. I think, as Mr. Maltby said, we have a good group of people that work here, and they made a large concession a number of years ago as a team playing type situation. People need to be paid a fair wage, and I believe this is certainly within parameters of a fair wage. It's not overly high, in my opinion, and it's a 2-year contract, which is also locking in our costs, so we'll know what our costs are going to be. So I think this is money well spent, and I believe that it's a good thing to pass. So we'll do the roll call. Roll call, please.
You are entertaining any more discussion?
I assumed we were all done because no one wanted to say anything.
Oh.
No.
I looked around and I approached Mr. Grocott.
I apologize.
I just assumed you were starting
No,
at
I
that
wasn't
end
starting
and
with. I
working
looked,
your
I
way
heard nothing.
down.
I looked at him. Please.
Okay. I will be voting for this. However, I do think that in the future, we may need to be looking at not having these kinds of increases. But I think at this point in time, we do have an excellent staff. We have a great leadership team. And given where right now the cost of living increases are going, this seems very reasonable. And I think we have the options for being able to adjust salaries in the future. This isn't giving any additional money in benefits that would be difficult to recoup. It's really tough to look at each dollar that we have available and decide how we're going to tear it into pieces and use it, and to say what we're going to use to pay our staff and what we're going to use to provide benefits to the people who live and work in our community. It's a tough decision, but I think at this point in time, this is a very good direction to go in.
Mr. Collins?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be voting in favor of this, and primarily the reasons for me is that employer-employee relations are really a two-way street. And for me, this comes down to it being a matter of loyalty. Mr. Maltby couldn't remember, but it was at least half, he said, that are still here. So those people, out of loyalty to the city, because they like working here, took an 8% cut 4 years ago. Our revenues are up $2 million since that time, if I understand the general fund revenue bar chart here. Our finances are better. We have a well-managed budget. And our employees were loyal at a time when it was when we were in really a very difficult position financially, and we were making a lot of huge changes to outsourcing police department, a fire department, those sort of things. To me, and on top of all that, this is a 3% increase, 3% next year. It's really a partial restoration. If you cut somebody's pay 10% this year, and then you say to them, I'll increase your pay 10% next year. That's not a salary recovery. That's a partial recovery, because you have to raise their pay maybe 11 or 12% to get back to where they were. And Mr. Grocott mentioned that we need to allocate money to other purposes. Well, those things are already in the budget. The money's already been allocated. We've looked at and planned for and budgeted for contributions to capital improvement, pension contributions, and that sort of thing. So, as I say, this to me is it's really a question of loyalty, and I think it's time that we return the favor of loyalty to those employees that have served us well for the last several years.
Mr. Olbert?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't reiterate the same sentiments that I've heard Ms. Clapper and Mr. Collins say. I did want to just mention one thing in response to something Mr. Grocott said. I actually think it would be useful for us to agendize, we had one about a year ago, useful for us to agendize a discussion of unfunded pension liabilities, again, briefly. I'm sure we've all been thinking about that because it's a big issue throughout California. I know I have, and there's some things I think that we ought to talk about because it's not beyond the realm of possibility. If we wanted to put money aside, we could do that. I'd like to actually talk about that before we actually did it, but so I would encourage us to have that discussion at some point.
Mr. Maltby, we have a report coming out in October. Ms. Mendenhall, I think you told me in October or so we're going to get some report from, on more solid numbers on that? Okay. I would say then when we get that report, it would be presented to us at council and we can have a discussion on it.
We'll agendize it at that time.
Okay? Good. All right. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clopper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Nope.
Councilmember Olbert?
Yes.
Mayor Grisilli?
Yes. Okay, we have 2 items to go back to on the consent calendar. Item 7C, authorizing the mayor to sign a letter in response to the civil grand jury report, San Mateo County Special Districts, who is really in charge of the taxpayers' money. The Mosquito District embezzlement is the tip of the iceberg. That's not our words, but the grand jury's words. Mr. Grocott, you pulled that?
I did. There were 2 things I wanted to bring up on that. The first one, I'm looking at the letter itself, and switch over there. So, looking at the letter, the draft of the letter, and under item 6, it says trustee and senior district staff should receive monthly financial reports. I know one of the things that we receive as a council and can be very helpful, I know I've used them before, to sort of root out things, is the warrants. And I don't know if they get those. If not, it seems like that would be something to add to the letter, that they should get, the trustees should get monthly financial reports and the warrants. Warrants being essentially canceled checks.
We're just responding to, well, I guess we could add that, agree with this finding, and we could say, and we encourage that warrants are also provided. Any problem with that, council? Nope. Okay, staff? Okay, fine. That's a good idea. Anything else?
Then just the other item is item 11. I don't really know how to approach this, and I didn't talk to anybody in advance, but item 11 talks about LAFCO rejected the recommendation, even though LAFCO Commission rejected the recommendation to dissolve the district and transfer its functions to the county, this issue needs further evaluation, and then the city's response is that we agree with that, and it then cites how the council in February of 2012 was in support of the recommendation to dissolve the district. I know at the time, and I still am, I was opposed to that, because I think one of the reasons that the embezzlement even got discovered is because it is a rather small organization, and somebody like Betsy could do her job and recognize what was going on, whereas if it were part of the county and a larger organization, while they may have more checks and balances to things, at the same time, being such a large organization, sometimes it's easier to do these kinds of things and get away with it for a time. So I don't know where this council stands on that issue, but I would be curious, because we may want to adjust the letter depending on how, this is a far different council. At the time it was Mr. Royce, Mr. Klein, Mr. Grisilli, myself, and I forget who the 5th person was at the time, but it's
Mr. Mr. Royce.
when we first did this, when this first came up. Was it? So you were on the council too. So, but there are 2 new council members, and you know.
Well, if anyone wants to change this, the response is the city agrees with this finding, which would mean a majority of the council agrees with it. Is there any change on this, or any comment? Otherwise, we just go with this writing, unless there's 2 other votes with Mr. Grocott.
I haven't changed my mind.
Well, I haven't changed my mind. So, anyone else? Nope. Okay. So I think we'll leave it the way it is on that one.
Okay.
So if that's it, I will ask for a motion. Motion on 7C.
Mayor, can I just suggest a grammatical correction?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure. I didn't realize there were other.
In the findings, I think this is, this is our response in the mayor's letter. In the findings, it says, finding number 1 response, the city partially disagrees with this finding.
I'm sorry, where are you?
On the number one.
Oh, okay, got it. I'm sorry. Okay, gotcha.
At least my copy doesn't show a close quote or an end quote. It starts with, quote, only one trustee, but then I don't, is the end quote meant to be at the end of that paragraph or at the end of the sentence before the end of the paragraph? I'm not really sure.
Mr. Collins, you must have been a former English teacher.
Okay, so staff, wherever it is, just fix it.
Just fix it.
That's it. Okay. Anything else? All right. So let's have a roll call, please.
Did we have a motion and a second?
We have a motion. I apologize. Motion and second.
I would move that we authorize the mayor to sign this letter and ship it off to, who are we shipping it to?
The grand jury.
The grand jury?
Grand jury.
The grand jury.
Second.
Okay. With the adjustments that we discussed, a couple of quick adjustments.
Exactly. Thank
All
you.
right. I'm sorry. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
Mayor Grisilli?
Yes. Okay. Next item is 7F, adopt a resolution appropriating $88,677 from the general fund reserves for the Highlands Field artificial turf infield replacement and authorize the sole source purchase from Le Monta Sport USA, or Le Monta. Mr. Grocott.
So the reason I pulled this is I was just curious. Seems like we're paying for, as it explains here, the different reasons for replacing some of the turf. And yet it seems, when I read this one part that says staff has experienced difficulty with the final field construction as the method used to secure the artificial turf seams, in other words, the seams in the turf, has failed in the majority of locations, and that somehow interrupted our ability to maintain the field as is recommended by the manufacturer to stay under warranty. What I'm seeing here is we're paying for, if the turf was installed per the manufacturer's recommendations and specifications, then the problem would fall either on the manufacturer or the contractor who installed it, and yet we're the ones paying for it. And this, to me, is like the bolts on the Bay Bridge. Why should we pay for it? We didn't screw it up. So,
Good question.
I think it should be covered some other way.
Mr. Walter, you luckily get to answer this, so go ahead.
I'll give it my best. Mr. Mayor, members of council, Jay Walter, Public Works Director. First off, this item in particular is one which, because the city has been collecting money into the fund from the various sports teams, we needed to have an ability to be able to get at some of that money if indeed we have to pay the full freight for this. We're in the process of trying to negotiate with the manufacturer for a reduced price. We hope that it would be one that we wouldn't have to pay any labor for installation of this, but at least in part, because we've had the use of the fields for the first couple of years since they've been in, the infill itself has begun to deteriorate. That's something that will occur over time. So there is an amount of infill you would expect to have to replace over a period of time. This, we kind of think this is excessive, and at least in part it's been because the field itself hasn't done what it was supposed to do as far as the seams and things like that. The manufacturer has been out to fix all those seams at no cost to the city. So at this point, we're trying to be in a position where we can get the infill here, get it deposited in the field, get it groomed out so that our field remains in really good shape. And again, trying to negotiate with them for a lower price. But I simply needed to get an appropriation item to the council so that I would be able to purchase the infill at whatever price we negotiate.
So I can appreciate that. So what you're saying is we're going to go ahead and get the material, use it, and so forth. But in the meantime, and we're going to have to pay for it. But in the meantime, we're trying to negotiate to get that price lowered.
That's correct.
Okay, and then being that we're having to do this, how are we on target for the idea of the money, as you mentioned, that the sports teams pay, is so that when it comes time to replace this field, we have, at least in part, money to replace the field, correct? So how does this put us on that target?
Well, as I mentioned in the staff report, we had approximately $255,000 in the fund. And so I would say that's a long way from ultimately being able to replace the turf itself. I don't know what our yearly contributions are to this fund, but I know that we would be looking at the full 9-year period before we would have to go back and really look to try to replace the field. Mm-hmm. But we are actively recovering costs from those teams as they register to play on the fields.
I can add just a little bit of information to that. If memory serves, when the field was adopted, it was under the assumption of a 9 to 12-year lifespan, depending on use and wear and tear and that kind of thing. And also, memory serves that we were talking about raising $1 million or more through the fee for the field. So we're tracking pretty close to that. This puts a little, uses a little bit of that money, obviously. But I think otherwise we're tracking very close to where we thought we would be 3 years ago when the council adopted the policies that are in place right now.
Mr. Albert?
Yes, Mr. Maltby, since you and I had talked about this offline, my recollection is that staff is not only negotiating to try and get a better price on the replacement infill material, but also considering whether or not there may be other avenues for recouping some of the cost as well, but that those are limited, potentially limited by the nature of the contract that was signed.
That's correct. We're looking at all possibilities, and in fact, one that I had a conversation before the meeting with Mr. Walter, and he reminded me of that I had forgot to mention when you and I talked. We're also looking at another vendor.
Another what?
Another vendor as a possibility, not only to reduce costs, but help increase the city's leverage in terms of negotiating with the vendor we've got.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Walter, very much. So do I hear a motion on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I will move that the council adopt resolution number 2013-97?
91.
91. Oh, you're right. It's out of, we took it out of order. 91, 2013-91. Resolution of the City Council of the City of San Carlos appropriating $88,677 from general fund reserves and authorizing the sole source purchase of organic infill material for Highlands Field from Lamanta Sport USA.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt this resolution. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Clapper?
Yes.
Councilmember Collins?
Yes.
Councilmember Grocott?
Yes.
Councilmember Obert?
Yes.
Mayor Griselli?
Yes. And looking at the agenda, I believe we have gone through it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would say we're moving now into a closed session, and we'll be coming back to report on that if there is any reportable items or not.
Well, we'll be meeting in the West Gallery, and there'll be, if there's any report out, it'll occur at the West Gallery at the conclusion of that meeting.
We will do that. Otherwise, we're done.